quality, building quality index, performance evaluation, post-occupancy evaluation, and etc., etc. But this one that we're talking about is key performance indicators that we use to interpret our critical success criteria, which are measures of critical success factors. Okay, so before we go on, let me give you a few other examples of critical success criteria just to serve as a reminder before we go deeply into measures of performance and critical performance in key performance indicators. So some examples of critical success criteria will be reliability, creativity, innovativeness, timeliness, cost efficiency, professionalism, responsiveness, consistency, technology integration, and so on and so forth. I'll take that example again. Some examples of critical success criteria which you use to measure your success factors are reliability, creativity, innovativeness, timeliness, cost efficiency, responsiveness, professionalism, consistency, progression, and technological integration. There's so many others, but that gives you a good example of what your critical success factors are. Okay, so like we mentioned earlier, critical success factor criteria can be quantified by your key performance indicators or your measures of performance. However, both terminologies are often used synonymously by people who don't know better. However, they're totally different, and they are just both ways of interpreting or quantifying your critical success criteria. And that is the reason why we need to examine each of these concepts deeply so that we understand that what are the differences between them and the features of each one of them, so that we don't keep using them synonymously and confusing them with each other. So if we, in our various organizations, decide to interpret our critical success criteria using measures, then we will be sure that we are really using measures. And if it is key performance indicators that we want to identify to measure our critical success criteria, then we will be sure that we're actually using key performance indicators. And that's why we need to understand both concepts, their features, and how they are different from each other. We also take examples so that will help us to understand the two concepts in a greater light. Okay, so let's start with key performance indicators. Our key performance indicators are units or standards that can be used to determine the extent to which a required task or a requirement has been fulfilled. Okay, so again, they are units or standards. Listen to that again, units or standard. So if your performance measurement is not in the form of unit or standard, then you should know that that is perhaps measure of performance and not a key performance indicator. So a key performance indicator is usually in units or standard, and you use them to determine the extent to which a requirement or task has been fulfilled. You also use them to determine the extent to which a required attribute or product has been created, or the extent of variation in a process. So you use your key performance indicators, one, to determine the extent to which a requirement or task has been fulfilled. Two, you use them to determine the extent to which an attribute or product has been created. Three, you use them to determine the extent of variation that has occurred in a process. So this is what you use key performance indicators for. So what are the features? We mentioned first that they are in units or standards. That's one of the important features of key performance indicators. Another important feature is that they are straightforward, they are indisputable, and they are quantifiable metrics. Okay, listen again. They are straightforward, indisputable, quantifiable metrics. So the first thing to look for to determine whether a an interpretation of your critical success criteria to measure performance is in the form of KPIs or just measures of a performance, is to review that interpretation and try to see if it was interpreted or stated in a unit or standard form. Okay, so if it is stated in a unit or standard form, that is likely to be a key performance indicator rather than just measures of performance. If it is stated in a straightforward, indisputable, quantifiable format, okay, in other words, it's in quantities and is indisputable, it's straightforward, then you should know that that should be a key performance indicator. Okay, so another thing is that we should understand that we derive key performance indicators to measure financial performance, customer satisfaction, processes, and job outcome. Okay, so you can derive your key performance indicators to measure financial performance, customer satisfaction, your processes, as well as job outcome. Another important feature of your key performance indicator is that it measures it usually gives the magnitude. Okay, it measures magnitude, and then it also usually comes accompanied with units. The magnitude measures how much, while the unit measures what number. Okay, the unit gives the number a meaning. Okay, while the number is the magnitude, which is how much. So you will find your key performance indicators coming with numbers and coming with a unit that gives the number a meaning. So the number is the magnitude of what is being measured, whereas the unit is what interprets what is being measured. Okay, so key performance indicators also indicate performance requirement by providing detailed information about quality and the content of the service to be provided. They give detailed information about the quality and the content of the services to be provided. Let's take typical examples of key performance indicators. Um, so if you say staff, your staff must conclude 85% of all customer issues at first call. Staff must conclude 85% of all customer issues at first call. You can see, quantifiable measures. You can see that what is being interpreted in that area. We need one of you to mute themselves. Who is that? Somebody's line. Judith. And Adewale, you are interfering with the class. Kindly mute yourselves. Okay. I hope I'm still audible to the class. Class rep.
Yes, ma, you're very audible.
Yes, ma, you're very audible.
Okay, so let's continue. So I was giving an example. Please mute yourself as soon as you respond so that we don't continue to have interferences. So I was giving an example of a KPI, and I said staff must conclude 85% of all customer issues first call. So you can see some element of standard quantifiable metrics in that KPI that I've just stated. So if you now want to measure the performance of your staff using that KPI, you simply go and find out what proportion of customer issues are being resolved after the first call. Okay, so if it is say 90%, then you know that your staff are meeting that KPI. If it is at 70%, then you know that your staff are not meeting that KPI. Okay, because what you require is 85% of all customer issues to be resolved after the first call. In other words, once your customer call in on the phone and say, I have so and so problem, you're expected to be able to resolve in 85% of cases those problems without that customer having to call back and say, this is a reminder, my work, my problem has not been resolved. Okay, so that is what we're talking about here. If you look at the feature of this example that I gave you, you will realize like we said, it sounds like a standard, okay, that is required of your staff to meet. Okay, so that's an important feature of KPIs. Also, you will notice that it has quantifiable metrics. You're saying 85% of customer issues must be concluded at first call. Okay, so you're also seeing a number and you are seeing units, just like we described. That those are features of key performance indicators. So it must always carry a number, and it must carry it must always carry a number, and it must carry a unit to show that your number and to show the number is the magnitude, like we mentioned earlier, while the unit is what the number is measuring. So in this case, you will see that the 85% is the number. Okay, that's the magnitude, while customers call, okay, customer issues at first call is the unit. So 85% is the magnitude. What is interpreting that magnitude? You know, customer issues at first call. That is what the unit is. Okay, so let us take another example. Please let me know when I become inaudible to the class, please. A second example is the service provider shall ensure that the boardroom is clean and tidy 30 minutes prior to every meeting. Okay, so this is also a standard, as you can see. It is quantifiable and it is written in quantitative form. It has a number and it also has a unit. The number again is the magnitude and the unit is what tells you what the number is measuring. So in this case, 30 minutes is the magnitude. And what is this 30 minutes having to do is cleanliness of the boardroom before every meeting. That is the unit. So for every meeting, the boardroom must be ready, must be clean and tidy 30 minutes prior to every meeting. Let's take two more examples. One where the explanation is not in two forms. Sometimes our magnitude is dual and our unit is also dual instances. So in this case, we are looking at Toyin. Who is Toyin? Fadiora Toyin. And then Toyin's iPhone. Please mute yourselves. You are interfering with the class. Who is Toyin? Toyin's iPhone. Please mute yourself. Okay. So we're saying that sometimes we find out that there might be dual numbers in our KPI, and sometimes our unit too can be doubled rather than single unit. So I said we will take further examples, one that has the regular, one magnitude and one unit, and another one that has two magnitudes and two units. Okay, so the first one we're looking at is illumination in the library must be maintained at 75 foot candles during the opening hours. Okay, I will repeat that. Illumination in the library must be maintained as 75 foot candles during the opening hours. So illumination in the library during opening hours is the unit. Illumination in the library during opening hours is the unit in this KPI, while 75 foot candles is the magnitude. Okay, 75 foot candles is the 75 foot candles is both I beg your pardon, is both magnitude and unit, whereas illumination in the library during opening hours explains what we are measuring. Okay, so 75 is the number, foot candles is the unit. Just as with the prior example, where 30 is the magnitude and minutes is the unit. Okay, so let's take one more example where the magnitude is not just one. In other words, the numbers is not just one. We have more than one number, and we probably have more than one unit. So take this example, the relative humidity in the printing press must be maintained at 50% plus or minus 5% between the hours of 8 a.m. and 22 hours.
8 a.m. and 4 p.m.
Please, if we keep having interference, I'll be forced to tell the class rep to take out that student. Please, do not let us keep having interference. It's affecting our concentration, please. So please, do not unmute yourself unless you are required to. And if you are required to, as soon as you respond, please mute yourself back. I hope that is clear to members of class, please. Class rep, anybody else that unmutes themselves unexpectedly and disturbs the class, please take them out of the class.
Okay, ma.
Thank you. Okay, so in that example, we're talking about relative humidity in the printing press during printing hours. Okay, and we realize that printing hours is between 8 a.m. in the morning and 22 hours, which is 10 o'clock in the night. So we're saying that relative humidity in the printing press must be maintained at 50% minus or plus 5%. That means that if the relative humidity is 45%, is acceptable, and if it's kept within 55%, it is also acceptable. The reason why humidity is very important to a printing press is because if the humidity is not optimal, then there's tendency for what is being printed to smear. There's tendency for the pictures, for your printing to smear, and that is aborted work. That is waste of resources, because those work will have to be condemned. So that's why relative humidity is an important measure of performance for a printing press. And when it is now translated into a KPI, it sounds like what we have just read. However, we're saying that the magnitude in this case is double, because we are looking at relative humidity, which we said should be 50%. Okay, so 50% for relative humidity, that gives us the magnitude as well as the unit. And then we're saying that the magnitude is dual, and so is the units, because we're also looking at the time of the day when this humidity has to be kept that way. So we said between 8 and 22 hours. So 8 and 22 is the second magnitude, whereas hours is the second unit. So this is a typical example where we have dual magnitude in our KPI as well as dual units. Sometimes it could be more than two, okay? But typically, we have maybe one or two magnitudes as well as units in our typical KPIs. I need to say that the previous example when we talked about library is because illumination and ability to see well in the library is very important to the library. And that's why it's a key performance indicator for measuring performance in our library, okay, as far as illumination is concerned. Okay, so this gives us very good examples of key performance indicators. So you can then track these key performance indicators on a yearly basis, biannual basis, quarterly basis, monthly basis, or fortnightly, depending on what you have agreed initially to as the tracking period for the KPIs. So all you now need to do is to, over the agreed period, whether it's fortnightly or monthly, see how many times your staff have met the KPIs, okay, and then record it for them on a proportional basis. So you can say that this KPI on illumination has been met by the staff during the last fortnight on 80% of cases, or it has been met on 90% of cases, or it has been met at 70% of cases, or it has been met for at 50% of cases. Meanwhile, you would have identified for yourself the least acceptable percentage of cases when this KPI must have been met. Okay, so if your acceptable percentage is say 85% and your service provider is meeting 50%, perhaps you would have had in your contract agreement an indication that with that kind of performance, they are only entitled to say maybe 60% of their pay, or they are only entitled to 65% of their pay. Okay, so but as performance level climbs, the percentage of payment that they will be entitled to will also climb, astronomically. So you want a situation where if somebody is performing 90% or 95%, you are giving him 100% of pay, or at 95%, you are giving him 105% of pay. Okay, so that will engender performance, because people now want that special pep of 5% additionally to their pay, and they don't want a reduction in their pay. Okay, so they will be willing to work harder to make sure that they meet these required percentage of performance of 95% or 90% or 100%, as you have indicated. However, if they have like a 70% performance, perhaps they will be entitled to only 60%. So you want a situation where what they will be entitled to will be lower than their percentage of performance if they are not doing well. But as they do well progressively, you now give them higher proportion of pay than the way they are performing. Okay, that way you engender performance and you discourage non-performance. If somebody knows that with a 60% performance, they'll be earning 40% of their expected income, or with 70% performance, they'll be earning 60%. And they know that with 95% performance, they'll be earning 100%. And with 100% performance, they'll be earning 105%. This is what is known as carrot and stick approach. Carrot and stick style or reward system. Okay, is a reward system that has an extrinsic motivation to encourage outperformance. It's a reward-based system that adopts extrinsic motivation to encourage performance. You motivate them to outperform themselves by giving them, something exceptional, additional pep in terms of reward when they do well. And you reduce their rewards significantly more than the proportion of performance if they are doing poorly. So it is called carrot and stick because it is taking that, as in, most animals, to take the rabbit, for example. When a rabbit loves carrots very well, so a way to encourage the rabbit to do well is to give him carrots. So in the same way, when your service provider does very well, you encourage him with the carrot by giving him more than the proportion of performance that he has performed in terms of pay. On the other hand, when a rabbit or other animals are misbehaving, you can give them the cane by caning them, give them the stick, and that would definitely discourage them from, going back to what they have been doing. You can take also a goat as an example. If you give a goat carrot, it's very nourishing for him. So for him or her, as the case might be, and that will be, an extrinsic motivation for that goat to do what is being required. Whereas if you use the stick on a goat, the goat will run away. It will also realize that you are, you want him to go away from that thing that he's doing at that particular time. And this is why it is tagged as carrot and stick approach. So this carrot and stick approach can be applied both to KPIs and measures of performance. Now we have understood very well what our KPIs are. I'll wait for any question on KPIs, and then we'll go back and look at measures of performance and see how measures of performance is different from KPIs, as they are both ways of interpreting our critical success criteria in the measurement of performance. So any question or questions on KPI before we move on to just look at measures of performance? Any question, anybody? Class rep?
I just want to give an information. Please, if you have any question, just unmute your mic quickly. As soon as you are done with the question, please, you should mute back your mic, please.
Okay, so thank you very much for that information. I will wait for like 10 seconds to see if there is anybody who wants to unmute their mic and ask the question so that they can mute back themselves after asking the question.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ma. My
Good
question
evening.
is,
Introduce yourself and then ask your question.
okay, my name is Oinola.
Your name is?
Oinola.
You don't know your name?
Oinola.
Lola. Okay.
Oinola.
Yes.
Yes.
You have the
Oh,
floor.
my
Ask
question
your question.
is, what's the difference between KPI and objectives?
KPI, and you're very low.
Oh,
We can't hear you.
okay. Let me try to. Hold on. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay. I said, what's the difference between KPI and objectives?
And
Objectives.
your objectives are what you derive from your critical success factors. Okay? Once you derive your objectives from your critical success factors, they will tell you what you need to achieve. Okay? So your aim is what you intend to achieve. Your objectives are the strategic steps you want to take to achieve what you need to achieve as an organization. I hope that is clear to everybody. Your critical success factors are identified from the organization's mission statement. And these critical success factors have to be interpreted into your aim and objectives, your goal and your objectives. Why your goal or aim is what you have to achieve to be successful as that organization. Your objectives are the strategic steps you need to take in achieving what you have set out for yourself. I hope that is clear to everybody. For example, you say, um, you say, um, one of your objectives is marketing, for example. Okay, to be able to not marketing, to be able to cover, you know, a certain market as far as your provision of service is concerned. Okay, you want to increase your market, the market of your product, the market of your service. That could be your uh your your aim, as the case might be. Then this aim has to be interpreted into specific objectives, which has to be strategic steps that you want to take in achieving that objective. So I hope that is clear to everybody. For example, you may say we need to increase sales by so increasing the market share will be your critical success factor. Your aim will then be increasing sales by 30% in 2 years, for example. Increasing sales by 30% in 2 years. That will be your aim or main goal. Okay, that has now to be translated into objectives, which are strategic steps you want to attain to achieve that goal or aim. For example, you can say increase our advertisement um, um, coverage by 50% in 6 months. Okay, so that your product becomes better known to the people. That could be a strategic step that you want to take. Okay, so having drawn up these goals and objectives, you now have to go back and measure the extent to which you are meeting the goals, as indicated by the various objectives. Okay, so it is your critical success criteria that you use to measure these objectives, the performance of these objectives. So while objectives are critical steps or strategic steps that you need to take to achieve your goal, your critical success criteria is the way you measure your goal. Okay, and we're now saying that those critical success criteria can be interpreted in two forms, either through key performance indicators or through measures of performance. So we have examined what key performance indicators. We have examined their features and how you use them. Okay, so we now said if there are questions on KPIs before we go to measures of performance, but we intend to look at measures of performance slightly also before we go on. However, to answer your question again, objectives are the strategic steps you take in achieving a goal. Okay, whereas KPIs is one of the two ways you use to measure achievement of your objectives. Is that
Thank you.
clear? Okay. I hope other members of the class have also learned from that question. Do we have any other one before we go on? Okay, I'm assuming that we don't have any other question. So we've taken examples of KPIs. Let us also take examples of performance measures. Okay, so we said both KPIs and measures of performance are used to determine the extent to which some requirements have been fulfilled or some targets that we have set for ourselves via our objectives. We want to see the extent to which they have been achieved. So we have seen the features of, your KPIs. What we are trying to say is that your measure of performance are also used to determine, the extent to which your objectives have been met. But unlike your KPIs, they are not quantifiable, okay, and they don't have a magnitude and numbers, okay. You can derive them for both financial or non-financial critical success criteria, and you apply them directly in the measurement of performance. So they are usually used in a survey or questionnaire. So that's how they are different from KPIs. Why KPIs are standards, they are units of measures, they are quantifiable, they have magnitude, they have units, and we have taken examples, and we said the way to use them is just to now on an agreed time basis, maybe quarterly or monthly or fortnightly or biannually, you now go and measure the number of times to which those KPIs have been met and convert them into percentages and determine the extent to which that the staff or are performing, or your organization is performing in the provision of the required service. However, in the case of measures, you derive them for both financial and non-financial critical success criteria, and you apply them directly in performance measurements in a survey or in questionnaires used in a survey. So you will just tell your respondents to rate the extent to which that measure, okay, is being performed, the quality of that measure, or the extent to which that particular measure is being met. Typical examples of performance measures are punctuality, regularity at work, level of courteousness, level of creativity, client deliverables, um, revenue generated, responsiveness to feedback, staff appearance. So you can say something like, rate the level of punctuality of this staff on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being very dissatisfactory, 2 being dissatisfactory, 3 being fairly satisfactory, 4 being satisfactory, and 5 being very satisfactory. Okay, so that's how you use measures. You can, to take other examples, you can say measure the level of creativity of this staff on a scale of 1 to 5, or 1 to 7, or 1 to 100, as the case might be. Okay, in the case of 1 to 100, you could give different ranges that represent different measures of performance. For example, you could say 1 to 10 1 to 20 is very dissatisfactory. 21 to 40 is dissatisfactory, and so on and so forth. Or 1 to 7, okay, or 1 to 5. Another one is you can say score the level of innovativeness of this staff or our services on a scale of 1 to 5. Or you can say rate the timeliness of completion of our service, of our task as a company on a scale of 1 to 5. So you simply go to the recipients of your services or the occupiers of your property that you are managing and give them a questionnaire that will contain all of these measures of performance, okay, that we use to rate, okay, some of these earlier critical success criteria that we mentioned, such as reliability, creativity, innovativeness, timeliness, cost efficiency, responsiveness, all of these things. So you now break them down into measures of performance, like the example we gave, okay, uh, timeliness, responsiveness, all of those could be completion of task, all of those could be seen to be under critical success criteria of reliability, for example. Okay, so you will use all of these measures, you create them for each critical success criteria that is important to your organization, and then simply ask your respondents to rate, your performance based on these measures on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 7, 1 to 100, or your preferred scale, explaining to them what each level of the scale interprets to. Okay, it is important to note that when you are using these scales, you should not have a scale that will be what they call neutral value in your scale, because your scale of measurement is expected to be an interval scale. So if you have a neutral value in between, it throws your scale into an ordinal scale. An ordinal scale can only be measured by frequencies and percentages. You cannot use mean. Okay, so and since you are trying to establish a mean value for the rating of all the respondents for each of these measures, then it is ideal that you use a scale that does not have neutral value. By neutral value, we mean a scale that has in the middle a value like unsure, uncertain, inconclusive, or neutral. Okay, so if you note the scale that I gave you earlier, it doesn't have such neutral scale in the middle. It goes progressively from very dissatisfactory to very satisfactory. Let me take it again. 1 representing dissatisfactory, very dissatisfactory, 2 representing dissatisfactory, 3 representing fairly dissatisfactory. Note, there is no neutral value. 4 representing satisfactory, and 5 representing very satisfactory. So you can see the progression of increasing in the level of satisfaction from very dissatisfactory to very satisfactory. I don't have any neutral value like unsure, uncertain, or inconclusive in the middle. Okay, so that makes it an interval scale, and that means that you can analyze this scale by simply taking an average of the ratings of all of your respondents for each of the measures. So if you take responsiveness of staff, for example, and you ask all of your respondents to rate the staff of that organization on how responsive they are to the occupier's needs, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5. and you take an average of all of their ratings, and you find out that the average is 3.5, you could say that that company has scored 3.5 out of 5 as far as uh, level of responsiveness to feedback is concerned. You might decide to also rate timeliness. How quickly do they respond to needs? How quickly do they complete tasks? Okay, so you tell all your respondents to rate the organization again on that level of timeliness, and perhaps they scored 3.8 on average in that. Okay, you can also tell them to rate their level of creativity. Okay, there are others for the building. These are for the services of the facility manager. There are also others. We are starting to have interference again.
Not everybody
Class rep.
likes your
That
father
interference
anger.
is
My apologies, but I just admitted the person in. It entered like that. So
you muted yourself, man.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, so did you hear my last statement?
No, my.
That okay. What was the last thing you heard me say, please?
Okay, the last thing I
So I
heard
could repeat.
we heard you say was the interference. So after that, I think you went on mute and we couldn't hear you, ma. So if you could just please repeat what you said, ma. Thank you.
Okay, kindly mute yourself too, so that we won't have interference from you as soon as you are through with what you're saying. So I'm saying that a class rep, I think you should ensure that anybody who is joining the class has his audio muted before joining the class. So it's bad enough that somebody is joining so late into the class and then he's interfering with the class because he's being allowed to join. I also said that anybody that does not join my class 30 minutes into the class will be assumed not to be around, because I'm going to take class attendance exactly at 30 minutes into the class rep. So you do that for me every time. So these are part of the decorum that we need to abide by when we are in class. Okay, so the other thing I said is that you should take, that's the class rep, you should take the attendance for me right now. Take a screenshot of the attendance for me right now so that you send that to me after the class. And I also asked whether you have been recording the session from the beginning, like I requested of you.
Yes, we have been recording the session. Some other colleagues are doing that, and I am on the ground monitoring the participants who unmute their mic. Accidentally, I may not get them on time, especially when they are just coming in. But I will snap the attendance now and then keep it until the lecture is over.
As soon as the lecture is over, send it to me. And like I said, try as much as possible to ensure that whoever is joining us has his or her, device muted by the time they want to join us so that they will not disturb us. Okay, and 30 minutes into our next class, at that very time, please take a snapshot of the attendance, and I will take it that those are the people that attended my class. Okay, today is an exception because it's the first class, but subsequently I'm going to keep to that, exclusively. So please, as part of the class decorum, when we are here, we can unmute when we want to respond to a question or make an observation, having been called to do so by the lecturer. And as soon as you conclude doing that, you remember to mute yourself back so that there will be no interference. It could be very, very disturbing and time wasting. Okay, so let's continue. So I was talking about measures of performance, examples of them, and how you apply them in performance measurement. Remember that we are looking at, applied performance measurement using all the concepts that we have learned. So we have examined KPIs, what they are, their important features, okay, the formats they take, the fact that they are quantifiable, the fact that they have numbers, the fact that they have units. We have also gone ahead to take examples, and we have gone ahead to see how we actually apply them in measurement, and how we actually even use the values in a reward system, such as a carrot and stick approach. And then we moved on to measures of performance. We have taken examples, and we are now talking about how they can be used to measure performance. And we talked about making sure that our scale that we use in our performance measurement do not have neutral scale. Otherwise, we'll not be able to use averages to determine our level of performance. Normally, when you have a scale of 1 to 5, and 3 is rated as fairly satisfactory, and 4 is satisfactory, most people will be satisfied with a midway score between fairly satisfactory and satisfactory, while some others will only be satisfied with a score of 4, which is where satisfactory actually begins. So it depends on your organization and what you take as your hypothetical performance value, okay, which, like I said, will usually be between 3.5 and 4. So some people will take it that anything above 3.5 is satisfactory performance, and anything, while some will take it that is anything above 4, okay, and some will still want improvements even on a performance score of 4, okay, but anything below 3.5 is definitely a good indication that you need to improve your performance in that measure significantly. You can also take an average of the performance of all measures, generic score for all of the measures together. So you can look at your performance as an establishment, as an individual, using each of those measures. But you could also look all together, taking an average of rating of respondents survey. And like I said, on a scale of 1 to 5, most of the nominees above 4 will be seen as points. Okay. Sometimes it is anything above 3.5. So it depends on what level of performance the creativity measure has the least score, maybe because you're using 30 measures to measure your performance and level of creativity came 30th. So you can say that it's doing most poorly. And that shows that there is serious need for improvement. Usually, if you have 30 measures, then the last 10 are definitely things to look at, okay? When they are the things you may need to address first, because it shows that they are really performing poorly. However, the ideal thing to do is just to use your average performance score. So you can identify everything that needs to be addressed that has a score of less than 4. Okay. However, if there are many that has less than a score of 4, then it is those that rank lowly among them that will be the first ones that has to be addressed, because it shows that they are further from your target. So they will be the first things that you need to address. So that brings us to the end of practical application of performance measurement. Sorry, applied performance measurement, starting from how we need to identify our goals and to take it further back, how we need to identify what is our mission statement, and to identify the critical success factors in the mission statement and interpret them to goals, interpret them to objectives, and from those objectives, identify critical success criteria and interpret those critical success criteria either into KPIs or measures of performance. Sometimes you use both together in your evaluation of performance. Sometimes you stick to KPIs alone. Sometimes you stick to measures of performance alone, depending on what you want to measure. But the most common is that you use KPIs for those things that it is relevant to, and you use measures of performance to those things that it is relevant to. Like we said, go and measure the extent to which KPIs are being, if you are measuring the KPIs. Whereas in the case of measures of performance, you carry out a survey where you tell people to rate the extent of performance of that particular measure. And then you obtain averages for all of the ratings of your respondents. And depending on the percentage of performance, whether with KPI or the average rating of performance, whether with measures of performance, you'll be able to identify those that need, system to encourage them to perform better, okay, and what kind of reward system that you could apply in making them perform better. Okay, some of the rewards could be compensation, increased commission, bonuses. You can give small stipends if you are evaluating performance of your staff. But if in the case where you are evaluating performance of a company, then of course most things, most reward will be money based. Okay, if it is an individual staff, other rewards can be personalized gifts. Okay, a lovely addition to their desk. Okay, a gym membership or a spa day award or shopping, token or what have you. Okay, so this is how we carry out performance evaluation, and this is how we use the result in engendering improved performance. Okay, you must bear in mind that all of these long process, starting from mission statements, ending with measuring performance with KPIs or our measures, are not to be carried out in isolation. The reason why you can evaluate performance is to identify areas that are requiring improved service, improvement, and make sure that you feed back that finding into your next stage of identifying your goals and your objectives and giving your task to your staff members so that their overall performance can be improved. So like we mentioned, you're using a reward-based system where you use carrot and stick. Is either you give reward for good performance or there will be consequences for bad performance. And I've given you examples of some of the good reward that you could give to your staff if your staff performance is what you are evaluating. However, if it is an organization, then most of the reward will be in the form of monetary reward or some other reward that goes along with money. But if you're looking at individual staff, just like you can give them personalized reward, you can also give them consequences for poor performance, such as reduced employee commission, giving them an unfavorable shift. Okay, if you operate a shift system, you can make sure they miss out on a company-wide reward. So if there is a company-wide reward and somebody is particularly, left out of that company-wide reward, that could be a consequence for some of his non-performance. So that would discourage that staff from non-performance and will hopefully enshrine improved performance in his activities. You can also give him a task that he dislikes. Okay, so and you make him understand that he is earning that task because he has performed poorly. Okay, and that as soon as his performance is seen to improve, then those consequences will be removed. Okay, however, when we are using reward-based system, we must make sure that the reward is really worthwhile. Okay, if it is a reward that people will really not appreciate, then if it's not attractive enough to appeal to them, then it may not necessarily engender improved performance. And if you're using consequences as well, they must be quite undesirable. If it's a consequence that really doesn't touch the staff, then you may not be able to expect improved performance from such consequences. So if you're using a reward or consequence system to improve performance from what you find from your evaluation, you must make sure that whatever reward you're using is attractive enough to appeal to the staff to improve his or her performance, and whatever consequences they are earning is quite undesirable and enough to discourage them from non-performance. Okay, so we also need to understand that reward should be unique. It shouldn't be such that you give reward to almost everybody. Then in that case, it doesn't. It's not a performance engendering reward any longer. Okay, so reward only the best. Reward only the best. Okay, some other reward is publicizing, an award to the staff as the best performing staff for the month or for the year or for the assessment period. Okay, and putting that in a public place where it can be seen by everybody, giving them some additional perks. Okay, so reward only the best, and also ensure that only the worst performers receive consequences. So if uh, 15 members of your 100 staff are found to have performed below expectation, then identify the very worst performer and make sure they receive the consequences that are quite, undesirable. And that this information is made known to everybody so they understand that they are facing that consequence because of their performance. Whereas the case of the reward as well, make sure the reward is attractive, and that you only reward the best performer. Okay, you can't say because 15 members of your staff scored 4.5 and above averagely in the evaluation, that you are not going to reward all 15 of them. Very soon your reward will lose attraction because so many people are entitled to it. So it doesn't seem make enough appeal to those earning. So usually to the best, okay, as the case might be. So this is how we carry out and apply as far as important terminologies, environmental sustainability issues, do a performance, and then we'll look at benchmarking largely as a performance framework, a better understanding of benchmarking and all it translates to. So that is what we will need to cover in subsequent classes. But before we go, I would like us to maybe quickly look at a few challenges of performance evaluation. But before we go there, I would like to know if anybody has questions or questions. So if once we tackle the questions, if there is any, then we'll take a look at challenges of performance evaluation, and we'll call it a day. And in the next class, by the grace of God, we'll start by examining some critical, some performance measures that are very important to us in facilities management, such as efficiency, effectiveness, safety, quality, usability, and so on and so forth. What do they mean? When we use all of those measures, what are we talking about? Okay, how do we measure them? What kind of measures do we derive for them? So we'll just look briefly at that in the next class before starting to look at environmental issues in performance management. So let me go back to the question. Do we have questions or a question on what we have covered so far on applied performance evaluation? class. You can unmute yourself if you have anything to say or any question to ask or any observation. Okay, and introduce yourself, ask the question, and mute yourself immediately as soon as you finish. Class rep.
I'm here with you, ma'am. It appears nobody
Okay,
is asking a question.
okay, because I was afraid whether I'm totally inaudible to the class, so I needed to know. That's why I called you. Okay, let's take like 5 minutes quickly and then reconvene to examine challenges of performance evaluation. So we can all remain in class if we want, but those of us who want to take a sip of water can do that very quickly. We want to just move around because it's not very healthy to sit for such a long time. Okay, we can do that quickly and then come back. Let's reconvene. Is 8:37 at my time here. Let's reconvene at 8:42 and then we'll look at the challenges of performance evaluation.
I think we can reconvene now.
Okay. I'm trying to see how many are we in class now?
43.
Okay. Okay. So let's continue then. Um so we want to look at a few of the challenges of performance evaluation, at least those that are important to us. It is by no means an all exhaustive list, just to give us some indication of a few challenges that we might encounter in measuring performance uh, or evaluating performance in our various organizations. I think the first and foremost challenge is that of difficulty with identifying what we need to measure precisely. Okay? And so, what do we need to measure is a very difficult task to determine. Uh, and unless we understand that performance evaluation does not just start with the measures and the KPIs, it actually has to start with, understanding the mission statement, identifying the critical success factors from this mission statement, and interpreting these into goals and objectives, and critical success criteria to measure these goals and objectives, and then translating that into or defining measures or KPIs to now evaluate these critical success criteria. Unless we do that, we might be measuring things that are not necessarily relevant to actually evaluating the performance of our activities or our organization. And when that is the case, we will get feedback that will not necessarily help to now improve our processes and ultimately improve our performance. So we must make sure that we identify precisely what we need to measure. And we must make sure that what we identify as what we need to measure aligns with our mission statement, as well as the goals and objectives of the organization. For example, I talked to you about library, the use of library earlier on. And one of the important things in performance of a library includes having a good stock of resources, okay, having good illumination, having good quiet, okay, when people are using the library. You don't want a library where, the acoustic quality of the library is so poor that every noise that people make outside of the library is very audible to you. That would disturb your concentration in the library, and concentration and a lot of privacy is required within your library. You also want your library to be well illuminated because you use your eyes a lot. You have to stare at resources a lot. Even if it is technology like ICT that you're using, you still have to stare at the screen. Okay, so you must make sure that all of these things are included in how you measure performance of the library. And when we talked about, printing press earlier, we talked about issues of humidity. Okay, so these are ways you measure performance. If you're looking at an hospital, you must be able to measure the quality of the surgeries. You must be able to measure the level of timeliness. You must be able to measure cleanliness, because if an hospital is not clean, then you just find out that your clients, your patients come in with one disease and they go away with another one because of the unsanitary quality of the hospital. Okay, you must make sure that your catering services must be very optimal, because you will have to provide bed space for your people, for your patients. You need to provide good meals for them to recover quickly from whatever ailment they are um, they are facing or are trying to treat. So you must make sure that you overcome this challenge with identifying precisely what has to be measured, and that what you are measuring aligns very much with the organizational goals and objective and the mission of the organization. Another thing is um, difficulties of identifying the required measures in relation to the goals. The first thing is identifying measures. What measures should I use? KPIs should I use? And how do I ensure that these KPIs are related to my goals and my objectives? You have been taught these as well, and how to interpret from mission statement all the way to your KPIs and your measures. So you must make sure you follow closely all of these steps to be able to ensure that the measures that you are using are the required measures and that they are in alignment with the goals and objectives of the organization. Another challenge is the absence of specific performance measurement criteria. Absence of specific performance measurement criteria. We have identified so many performance measurement criteria, okay, critical success criteria. We mentioned so many, and there are still so many that are not here. There's never a situation where, every organization already come with their own listed critical success criteria. So it's never specific. You just have to look at all that is available and try to identify the one that is very related to your own particular scenario. So that absence of specific performance measurement criteria is also a big challenge to performance evaluation. Another uh, challenge to performance evaluation is that it's a very intensive process, very, very intensive. Okay, so that intensity makes it require a lot of resources, okay, in terms of human resources, time, money, okay, and you find it difficult to convince organizational executives of the need to carry out performance evaluation sometimes because of this. So it's a very intense process. It takes a lot of, requirement to be able to achieve. And it also consumes resources significantly, both in terms of time, human resources, and money. Okay, so you must make sure that your organizational executives are convinced of the usefulness of your performance evaluation. You must be able to create a business case for your performance evaluation. You must be able to show that there's a lot that is being gained. There's a lot of money that is being saved. There's a lot of improvements to your processes that you're getting from the feedback from this performance evaluation. And that's why we say that performance evaluation must never be an isolated process. It must be used to feedback into that cycle of your policy, your strategy application, right from the understanding of your mission statement stage. Okay. Another challenge with performance evaluation is that it requires continuity and commitment. So it should never be a one-off case. Don't carry it out once, apply the feedback, and that is it. For several other years, you don't carry it out. Well, you will just find out that everything you have done is an aborted, effort, because what is useful from today's evaluation may not be useful at all to next year's, processes. So if you continue to carry, the feedback from a process that has been done years ago, you will realize that, it is not useful at all. It could actually be misleading and could actually lead to reduction in performance because you are addressing what does not need to be addressed. So you must see it as a continuous process and you must be committed to it. Okay, so the challenges of providing this level of commitment and carrying it out as a continuous process is another, significant challenge that many of us face in performance evaluation. The last but not the least challenge that I have here is the difficulty of feeding back results of performance evaluation into control and improvement process. Like I said earlier, it should never be done in isolation. Your aim should be to identify areas of improvement and feedback the findings into your next strategy phase. Okay, so strategy, even strategy identification stage. Okay, and make sure that you now implement the strategy in line with this feedback. Sometimes people find it very, very difficult to be able to convince organizational executives of the need to feedback these results of the evaluation into their control mechanism and process improvement mechanism, particularly if it requires some changes to the system. Sometimes people just want things to remain the same and they are not keen on changes, whereas this feedback sometimes require very serious changes and shake up of the system, which some organizational executives may not sponsor. And if they don't sponsor this, then you'll not be able to feedback those results into the next evaluation stage. So it is very important that you get the support to be able to feedback the result of performance evaluation uh, at that stage. Also, sometimes putting this feedback into your processes could require some resources, particularly money. Sometimes organizational executives may find it difficult to bring out these resources that is required for implementing such feedback. So that is what makes this another challenge to performance evaluation. But every organization, every facility manager must attempt to put strategies in place to reduce the impact of these challenges. Some of it is what we are doing now by teaching you how to identify what is to be measured, how to identify measures in relation to your goals, how to identify your, critical success criteria, and the need to have a business case to demonstrate the importance of your performance evaluation to your organizational executives. All of these things will help you to put in place strategies that will reduce the impact of these challenges, because it's very important to evaluate performance and to allow performance evaluation to achieve its purpose. Okay, otherwise, you could find it difficult to be able to improve your performance as an organization. Remember those adages that says that what gets measured gets done, and you cannot improve what you don't measure. You can't improve what you cannot measure. So performance evaluation is a very, very, very important aspect of performance management and improvement. And these challenges should be overcome one way or the other through our strategies, so that they will not continue to impact on your performance as organization. Okay, so these are what we look at as far as challenges is concerned. So do we have a question or questions that we would like to ask or comments before we call it a day? Class rep.
Hello, ma. Good evening.
I'm with you, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like to know if I was audible to the end. I'm asking for questions now, if any.
Yes, you're audible to the end, and even up till now, except for the time we had the break in your network.
Okay,
I
so
don't think
it appears somebody has a question. Igbala Joby, I could see your hand up. You have a question?
Yes, ma. Good evening, ma. My name is Ayo. I have a question. Okay, maybe two questions. Then. So when you were saying you were giving us the challenges of measuring, is it measuring key performance? Okay, sorry. Is it key success factors, or is it the challenges of measuring performance evaluation? I
What
didn't
we
get that.
just examined? Is it
Yes.
what we just examined?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think it is?
It looks like
Look at those points quickly and tell me what you think it is.
they look like they are challenges to measuring evaluation of performance. But
Exactly, that's what they are. They are challenges to evaluating performance generally.
okay.
KPIs are a type of, measure that you use
Okay.
to determine performance.
All right.
Well, in
So
this case, we're talking of general challenges to performance evaluation. Of course,
okay.
determining the right KPI or determining the right measures of performance to use will also be part of those challenges.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. The second question I wanted to ask is not fully related to this class, but I think the whole class would agree with me that we need some form of material for this course. Can we please have that, ma?
Well, I don't, like you all know, there are no specific materials when you talk about facilities management, because it's such a wide course. The same thing with performance evaluation. Yet to find a particular textbook that just talks about performance evaluation. So it's something that you have to pick here and there, So when I'm compiling my own notes and materials for teaching as well, or I'm preparing my slides, I have to consult several, materials. So my suggestion is that since you have the main topics that we're examining, you can as well go on the internet yourselves and try to put those concepts on Google or Google Scholar and see the materials that come through, and you review them and identify those that are helpful to help you in understanding better performance evaluation, and then you just adopt them. However, how far with your ebook on facilities economics? How many of you have that now? Hello, class rep. Can you help us on that? Have you received the password to your
As for me, I tried to open the
textbooks?
ebook, but there was nothing on it, so it was still giving me some administrative problem.
So I think everybody, what about others? Everybody that has administrative problems should let the coordinator know, so that the organization that is producing the book can be informed.
Okay,
What
ma'am.
about others? Are you the only one having this problem? You need to find
I
out
don't
from
think
your
so.
other classmates if there are others that are having the problem. Can you simply, did they give you a password to access the book and gave you a link?
Yes, you gave us the link, but he gave us the link said we should log in
Password.
with our email.
No, no, no. Well, the link should give you a password. They should have given you passwords individually. Did they send to you individual passwords? Did the organization send to you individual passwords to
No,
access the link?
no, man. No individual
No,
password
ma'am.
was sent to me. To
They
most of us
should have
anyway.
sent. So what was sent to you and who sent it?
It's just the link. You are the one that sent us the link.
No, I couldn't have.
Okay,
I'm
I
talking
think
of the ebook that you paid for.
yes, they sent us via
Facilities economics.
yes. We saw
Can
the
you
link.
send to me, class rep? Can you send to me what was sent to you to
Okay,
access
ma'am, I
the
will.
book? So let's see what the source of the problem is. Also, ask from every class member, everybody that is having a difficulty. Please prepare a list. I don't suppose that it will be everybody. So everybody that is having difficulty accessing the book, please compile a list of them for me, so that I can follow up with the
Okay, ma'am.
publishers.
I will do that.
Okay, if you had that book also has some things on performance evaluation that could be helpful to you. That was what I wanted to say. So you should all try as much as possible, Ayo, to make sure that you get your own copy of the book. Okay, and the book is very friendly to use, is well colored and all of that. So just open up to those parts that has to do with performance evaluation. And like I mentioned, other additional things like KPI and measures of performance and how to move from your mission statement to other things. You can put those individual concepts on internet and you'll be able to find materials. It's just that you have to read quite a lot of things to be able to help yourself understand better. So, but I could also look through again, and any material that I find that are related, I could send you the link to that. Okay. Any other question or request or observation? All right, I wish all of you a nice weekend then, and we hope to see again, or see virtually next week when we have the next class. Class rep, please send me the attendance list on WhatsApp and also send me the recording as well.
Okay, ma, I will do that. Thank you so much for the lecture.
Thank you very much, ma.
All right, you're all welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye, ma.
Bye
Bye.
bye, ma.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. I am ending the meeting now. Thank you.